In 2011, a scientist named Danny Hillman Natawijaja was sent to the volcanic highlands of West Java, Indonesia, to study earthquake fault lines. He was not an archaeologist. He was not looking for ancient ruins. He was a geologist working for Indonesia's National Research and Innovation Agency, mapping seismic risk in a region that sits on one of the most tectonically violent zones on Earth. His job was to find places where the ground might break. Instead, he found a place where the ground had been built. While surveying the terrain near a small village called Karyamukti, roughly 120 kilometers southeast of Jakarta, Natawijaja's instruments picked up something strange beneath a forested hilltop. The subsurface readings did not match anything volcanic. The density signatures, the layering patterns, the geometric regularity of what lay beneath the soil, none of it matched the chaotic geology of a collapsed ancient volcano. It matched construction. And when he aimed ground-penetrating radar deeper into the hill, the readings that came back would ignite a scientific battle that is still raging today. Because buried inside that hill, the instruments detected what appeared to be a massive pyramid-like structure built in multiple layers over thousands of years. And the deepest layer dated to a period so old that it should not be possible. If the data is right, what lies beneath this hill in Indonesia is older than Göbekli Tepe by more than 13,000 years. Older than the Egyptian pyramids by more than 20,000 years. Older than anything that is supposed to exist. The site is called Gunung Padang. In the local Sundanese language, it means mountain of enlightenment. And what has been found inside it could force us to rewrite everything we think we know about when human civilization began. Before we can understand why Gunung Padang matters, we need to understand what it is being compared to and why that comparison terrifies mainstream archaeology. Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey was the discovery that already broke the timeline once. Excavated beginning in 1995 by German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, the site consists of massive T-shaped stone pillars, some standing 18 feet tall and weighing up to 20 tons, carved with intricate reliefs of foxes, snakes, vultures, and bulls, then arranged in precise circles and fitted into sockets carved directly into bedrock. The construction required quarrying limestone from nearby ridges, transporting multi-ton blocks across uneven terrain, carving them with extraordinary precision using only stone tools and erecting them in prepared foundations, all without wheels, metal, or draft animals. Radiocarbon dating placed the oldest layers at roughly 11,600 years old, around 9,600 BCE. That was a problem, a very serious problem, because at that point in history, humans were supposed to be small bands of nomadic hunter-gatherers. No permanent settlements, no social hierarchy, no capacity for coordinated labor on this scale. The standard model of human development taught in every university said civilization followed a neat, predictable path. First came agriculture, then permanent settlements, then social hierarchy, then religion, then monumental architecture. Göbekli Tepe flipped that sequence completely upside down. It proved monumental architecture and complex symbolic thought existed before agriculture, before cities, before writing, before any of the developments that were supposed to be prerequisites. Schmidt called it a cathedral on a hill built by people we thought were primitives. It stood alone as the oldest known monumental structure on Earth, the capstone of human prehistory, the line in the sand that said, "This is as far back as it goes. Nobody builds anything bigger or older than this." Then an earthquake geologist in Indonesia shattered that line. And honestly, the universe has a sense of humor, because the man who may have found the oldest structure ever built by human hands was not even looking for a structure. He was looking for fault lines. That is like finding the lost city of Atlantis while checking your tire pressure. Here is what makes Gunung Padang so strange. The site was never truly hidden. People have known about it for over a century. In 1890, a Dutch colonial officer named de Kort filed a report about stone structures on a hilltop in West Java. In 1914, Dutch archaeologist Nicholas Johannes Krom documented terraces made from upright volcanic columns, classified the site as megalithic, and moved on. After that, Gunung Padang was forgotten. For 65 years, it sat untouched in the jungle, visited only by local Sundanese villagers who had always considered it sacred. Then, in 1979, a group of local farmers stumbled upon the overgrown ruins and alerted authorities. Archaeologists arrived and found something impressive. 5 artificial terraces cut into the hillside, bordered by stone retaining walls, accessible by a staircase of 370 ancient steps, rising 90 meters at a 45-degree angle. If you have ever complained about a stairmaster, imagine 370 stone steps at 45 degrees in tropical heat. The ancient Indonesians did not skip leg day. Each terrace was covered with hundreds of prismatic andesite columns, hexagonal in cross-section, naturally formed by volcanic cooling millions of years ago, but clearly arranged and positioned by human hands. The individual columns average about 1.5 meters in length and weigh approximately 250 kilograms each. Some are significantly larger, exceeding 600 kilograms. There are roughly 50,000 of them. 50,000 individual stone columns, quarried from volcanic formations, transported uphill and arranged into terraces, retaining walls, staircases, walkways, and gated entrances. To put that in scale, if you laid those 50,000 columns end to end, they would stretch for roughly 75 kilometers. That is almost 47 miles of volcanic stone, moved by hand up a hillside with no wheels and no metal tools. Pottery fragments from the surface dated to around 2,000 years ago. Indonesian archaeologists classified it as the largest megalithic site in Southeast Asia. Remarkable, ancient, but firmly within the conventional timeline. Nothing that should keep anyone up at night. That changed when Nadawijaya stopped looking at the surface and started looking at what was underneath. Between 2011 and 2014, his team conducted one of the most comprehensive subsurface surveys ever performed at an archaeological site. They used 4 independent methods: ground-penetrating radar to map structures, electrical resistivity tomography to detect density variations, seismic tomography using firecrackers and sledgehammers to send shockwaves through the hill and measure how they bounced back, and core drilling to extract physical samples for laboratory analysis. 4 different technologies, 4 different physical principles, all aimed at the same question: what is inside this hill? The answer they got was the same from every method. Gunung Padang is not just a surface-level terrace complex built 2,000 years ago. It is a layered structure extending 20 to 30 meters deep into the hillside, and each layer is older than the one above it. The team identified 4 distinct construction phases, stacked like chapters in a book that gets older the deeper you read. The top layer, Unit 1, corresponds to the visible terraces that tourists see today. Dated between 2000 BCE and 1100 BCE, consistent with conventional estimates. Nothing controversial. Unit 2, directly below, revealed more intricate stonework, dated between 6000 BCE and 5500 BCE. Already older than most textbooks say complex construction should exist in Southeast Asia. Unit 3 went deeper. It contained columnar rocks arranged in precise horizontal rows. That detail matters enormously because andesitic basalt columns only form vertically in nature. They are created by lava cooling and contracting vertically, always. It is one of the most reliable rules in geology. Finding them laid flat in organized parallel rows means someone placed them there deliberately. Between the horizontal columns, researchers found consistent layers of what appears to be a mortar-like binding material, roughly 5 centimeters thick. Mortar requires intention. Mortar requires knowledge of material science. Mortar requires someone deliberately mixing a compound and applying it between stones to hold them together. Lava tubes do not produce evenly spaced adhesive layers between their components. This layer dated to between 7,900 BCE and 6,100 BCE. And then there was Unit 4, the deepest layer, the foundation of everything above it, the layer that changed everything. Radiocarbon dating of organic material from within this layer returned dates between 25,000 and 14,000 years ago. The last ice age, the Paleolithic era, a period when every textbook Every university lecture, every archaeological consensus on Earth says that humans were incapable of building anything more sophisticated than a temporary shelter made of sticks, bone, and animal hide. According to the conventional timeline, the people alive during this period were at least 13,000 years away from building Göbekli Tepe. They were more than 20,000 years away from stacking the first stone of the Great Pyramid. And yet, according to 4 independent scanning technologies, somebody was building beneath this hill in Indonesia. But that was not the most disturbing finding, because deeper inside the hill, the instruments found something else, something that no one has ever opened. The electrical resistivity tomography detected high resistive anomalies at specific locations within the structure. In the exact same spots, the seismic tomography detected low velocity zones. When those two signatures overlap, they indicate one thing: voids, empty spaces, chambers. And the researchers estimated these cavities could be up to 15 meters long and 10 meters high. That is roughly 50 feet by 33 feet. You could park a commercial airliner inside a space that size. During one drilling operation, the team's drill punched through solid material at 7 meters depth and suddenly hit a zone where no core samples could be recovered. Then, the water being pumped into the borehole to cool, the drill disappeared. Not some of it, all of it. Over 32,000 liters of water drained into the hill and never came back. That is more than 8,000 gallons swallowed by an underground void that may not have been entered by a human being in over 10,000 years. Now, the scientific establishment did push back, and the criticism deserves mention. When the research team published their findings in the journal Archaeological Prospection in October 2023, other archaeologists pointed out that the radiocarbon dates came from soil samples rather than artifacts directly linked to construction. The journal retracted the paper 5 months later. The authors disagreed with the retraction, calling it censorship, and not a single member of the 12-person research team accepted the journal's conclusion. But here is what matters. The retraction challenged the dating. It did not challenge the structures. It did not challenge the chambers. It did not challenge the layered construction detected by 4 independent scanning methods. The geophysical data stands. Something is inside that hill. Multiple technologies confirm it. The only question is how old it is and who put it there. And this is where the story becomes genuinely unsettling, because the answer might lie not inside the hill, but underneath the ocean surrounding it. 25,000 years ago, during the last ice age, sea levels worldwide were approximately 120 meters lower than they are today. That's nearly 400 feet of missing ocean. And that missing water exposed an enormous landmass that geologists call Sundaland. Sundaland was not a collection of islands, it was a subcontinent. When fully exposed during peak glaciation, it connected the modern Malay Peninsula to Borneo, Java, Sumatra, and Bali into a single continuous tropical landmass twice the size of India. It sat on the equator, threaded with massive river systems draining to what is now the South China Sea, covered in dense tropical forest, rich in fresh water and wildlife. For tens of thousands of years, humans lived on this land. Modern humans occupied the region for at least 50,000 years. Homo erectus reached Java over 1 million years ago. That is an almost incomprehensible span of time for human societies to develop. And then, the ice melted. Starting roughly 18,000 years ago, sea levels rose in 3 catastrophic pulses. The first, around 14,500 years ago, raised sea levels by as much as 16 meters in just 300 years. To put that in perspective, that is the height of a 5-story building, swallowing coastlines within a single human lifetime. Generation after generation watched the ocean advance inland, consuming villages, drowning farmland, erasing everything built near the water's edge. The second pulse struck around 11,500 years ago. The third, around 7,600 years ago. Together, these 3 floods drowned Sundaland almost entirely, creating the Java Sea, the South China Sea, and the thousands of islands that make up modern Indonesia and the Philippines. An area larger than the modern Mediterranean Sea floor was swallowed in less than 12,000 years. And every flood myth in Southeast Asian oral tradition, every legend of sunken kingdoms and drowned worlds, may be an echo of people watching this happen in real time. If a civilization existed on Sundaland's vast lowland plains, it is now under the ocean. Gone. Almost entirely unreachable with current technology. Systematic surveys of continental shelves for structures older than 10,000 years have barely been conducted. We have mapped the surface of Mars in higher resolution than we have mapped the floor of the Java Sea. The only evidence that could possibly survive above water would be structures built on high ground, on hilltops, on volcanic ridges that remained above the rising tide as generation after generation watched the world they knew disappear beneath the waves. Places exactly like Gunung Padang. And here is a detail that makes this even more eerie. Less than 30 miles from Gunung Padang, in a nearby cave, archaeologists found bone tools dating to 7,000 BCE. Simple, crude, exactly what you would expect from Stone Age people scraping by with basic technology. If the community living practically next door was still carving basic tools from bone, who was building sophisticated multi-layered stone structures on the hilltop above them? The contrast is jarring. It is like finding a thatched hut next to a skyscraper and being told they were built by the same people at the same time. The answer that some researchers propose is that the builders did not come from next door. They came from below, from the lowlands that are now the ocean floor. Refugees from a drowning world, carrying knowledge and skills developed over thousands of years on a continent that no longer exists, building on the only ground that would survive what was coming. And if they were trying to preserve something, to leave a record, to create a marker that would outlast the flood, they would have built it exactly where Gunung Padang stands. On a hilltop, on high ground, on the bones of an extinct volcano that had not moved in 32 million years. But Gunung Padang does not just challenge our understanding of when humans could build. It challenges our understanding of what they knew. Because the site is encoded with patterns that suggest far more than simple construction. The Sundanese people who have lived near Gunung Padang for centuries recognize something most archaeologists initially missed. The number 5 appears everywhere at this site. 5 terraces, 5 surrounding hills, 5 rivers encircling the complex. The basalt columns are predominantly 5-sided. Stone surfaces are adorned with clusters of indentations arranged in groups of 5. In Sundanese cosmology, the number 5 holds deep sacred significance. This is either the most extraordinary series of geological coincidences in recorded history, or it is evidence of a deliberately encoded symbolic system that connects the architecture to the landscape in ways that require abstract mathematical and cosmological thinking. On the lowest terrace sits a 5-foot-long andesite block that the Sundanese call the Batu Kakapi, the stone lute. When you strike it, it produces a deep, resonant tone that carries across the entire valley. Other stones on the site produce different pitches when hit. One researcher documented a single stone that generates 5 distinct tones depending on where you strike it. Whether these acoustic properties were intentionally engineered or discovered by accident is unknown. But the Sundanese have been ringing these stones for centuries, treating them as instruments of ritual and communication with the spirit world. And there is one more connection that deserves serious attention. The hexagonal basalt columns that make up Gunung Padang are nearly identical in composition and form to the stones used to construct Nan Madol, a mysterious ancient city built on 92 artificial islands off the coast of Pohnpei in Micronesia. That is over 4,000 miles across the Pacific Ocean. Nan Madol contains an estimated 250 million tons of the same type of volcanic basalt, stacked into massive walls and platforms using construction methods that engineers still cannot fully explain. The local legend there says 2 brothers used magic to levitate the stones into position. At Gunung Padang, the Sundanese legend says King Siliwangi built the entire complex in a single night using supernatural forces. 2 sites, same stone, same impossible legends, 4,000 miles apart. It is probably a coincidence. Probably, but it is the kind of probably that you think about at 3 in the morning when you cannot sleep. Today, Gunung Padang is not a forgotten ruin, it is a living sacred site. Local Muslims climb the 370 steps to read the Quran among the stones. Hindus from Bali travel to the summit for ceremonies aligned with the full moon. Practitioners of Pencak Silat, the Indonesian martial art, train on its terraces. Whatever Gunung Padang was built for, whatever it contains, it has never stopped being a place of power in the minds of the people who live in its shadow. The Indonesian government designated Gunung Padang a National Cultural Heritage Site in 2014, and that designation has effectively sealed the site from further invasive investigation. The chambers detected by 4 independent scanning technologies have never been opened. No camera has been lowered into them. No artifact has been recovered. Whatever is inside, whether empty volcanic cavities or the most significant archaeological discovery in human history, remains unknown. Think about that. We have ground-penetrating radar confirming subsurface structures. We have electrical resistivity tomography mapping density anomalies. We have seismic tomography triangulating void locations. We have a drill that lost 32,000 liters of water into a space no human has entered in millennia. And we have a government that says no. When Klaus Schmidt first excavated Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, he estimated he had uncovered less than 5% of the total site. Decades later, that number has barely changed. The discovery that already rewrote human history is 95% still buried. At Gunung Padang, the percentage is closer to 0. We have scanned it, mapped it, bounced every type of wave imaginable through its interior. Every method has told us the same thing. There is far more inside this hill than anyone expected, and none of it has been touched. None of it has been seen. None of it has been opened. We are standing outside a locked door, pressing our ear against it, hearing something on the other side, and we have not turned the handle. And consider this. Göbekli Tepe was deliberately buried around 8000 BCE. The people who built it did not abandon it and walk away. They carefully, intentionally filled it with tons of soil and sealed it, preserving it beneath the earth for reasons no one has ever been able to explain. They did not destroy it. They did not let it crumble. They buried it, as if they wanted it to survive intact for someone to find later. Nobody knows why. Archaeologists have debated this for decades without reaching consensus. But at Gunung Padang, the deeper layers show evidence of the exact same behavior. Each construction phase appears to have been deliberately buried before the next one was built on top. Layer upon layer, each one sealed and covered, as if the builders wanted to preserve what they had made while building something new above it. The deepest layer was buried by the people who built the layer above it. That layer was buried by the people who built the layer above that, and so on for potentially thousands of years until the final surface terraces were constructed and left exposed. 2 sites, separated by over 5,000 miles, potentially separated by thousands of years, both consisting of massive stone construction built during or near the end of the Ice Age, both deliberately buried by the people who created them. That is either a coincidence or it is a pattern. And if it is a pattern, it raises a question that archaeology is not equipped to answer. Why would people build monuments designed to be found by someone else thousands of years in the future? What were they trying to preserve? And who did they think would eventually come looking? An earthquake geologist in Indonesia was mapping fault lines when he accidentally stumbled onto a hill that should not exist. The instruments he pointed at it revealed layered construction going back thousands of years, hidden chambers that have never been entered, and evidence that human beings may have been building on a scale we cannot explain during a period when they were supposedly incapable of it. That hill sits on the remnant of a drowned supercontinent where an entire civilization could have risen and fallen without leaving a single trace above the waterline, except for monuments built on high ground. We do not know what is inside the chambers of Gunung Padang. We do not know who built the deepest layers, or when, or why. We do not know what Sundaland's flooded plains are hiding beneath the Java Sea. What we do know is that the Mountain of Enlightenment has been sitting in the Indonesian highlands for a very long time, and it has been keeping its secrets for far longer than any of us have been asking questions. The hill is still there, the chambers are still sealed, the answers are still inside, and every year that passes without opening them is another year we spend assuming we already know the full story of where we came from. The mountain of enlightenment is still waiting. If you found this fascinating, subscribe to Chronofall for more stories that challenge everything you thought you knew about our past.